But no, it's, I don't know, like you're never idle, which I think is all right. All right, no worries, man.
Are you ready to take your love for Spurs to the next level? Because we've got some exciting news for you. We're amping up our membership program so you can get even more of your Spurs fix. Plus, we're giving you ample opportunities to show off your Tottenham knowledge and win some epic prizes along the way.
As a Platinum member, you'll get access to exclusive shows, Q&A sessions, as well as FIFA content. You'll also have weekly chances to win We Are Tottenham TV merch in our weekly giveaways exclusively for you, our members.
But wait, there's more! We're introducing members-only giveaways during our watch-alongs, so not only can you watch the game with us, but you can also interact and win some incredible gifts along the way, talk about a win-win situation.
And if you're a die-hard Tottenham Hotspur fan, we've got something special just for you. Our frequent Spurs quizzes will test your knowledge and reward the most passionate fan with some amazing prizes. And if that's not enough, you can even be part of our weekly fan shows and have your say on everything happening at Tottenham Hotspur. It's like being in the locker room with the team. Well, not quite that, but you get the idea.
All of this epic content and exclusive benefits can be yours for just £12.99 per month. That's less than the price of a burger and a pint at the Tottenham Stadium. So don't wait, join our We Are Tottenham community today and take your love for Spurs to the next level. Trust us, you won't regret it. Come on, you Spurs.
Yeah, I'm all good, buzzing to be here. Pre-season about to kick off. I mean, the football's back. What more do we want? And it's a pleasure sharing the screen again with HG as well from the Cheese Room.
Yeah, absolutely. Also returning guest HG. He's never been on the panel, so it's his panel debut today. But the last time he was on this channel, he was absolutely tearing me and Sim apart in a Spurs quiz. HG, how you doing, my friend?
It was mostly Seb, I think, who was doing that. But yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. It's, as I said to you before we started, summer holidays here in Vienna. Life is good. Can only think about Spurs now.
Well, let's hope life is good then if you're only talking about Spurs and thinking about Spurs. But we've got a lot to talk about today, starting off with our first topic of the panel, and that is regarding our new signing, Manor Solomon, and our latest signing, Manor Solomon. We'll start with you, HG. What's your feeling around the Manor Solomon signing, and do you think it's a good signing for Spurs?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, it's a free transfer of a guy who's played the Premier League football, played Champions League football, and he's young and incredibly talented. And if he only has that one trick of finding the far corner with a curling shot, I'm all right with that because he'll do it often enough for Spurs. But I don't see any reason to dislike the signing. I think it should be a good one. There's very little risk.
Yeah, you know, there's been kind of mixed reactions within the Spurs fan base. A lot of people maybe wanting someone more prevalent in the game that's been there, done that, and done more than Manor Solomon. You know, Manor, he had good spurts last season with that 5-6 game stretch where he scored, I think, 5 or 6 in a row. But it was a lot of inconsistencies there. So do you not buy into that at all?
I mean, he's not coming in to be a first choice, is he? So, like, I think it just strengthens an area. Like, I mean, you could sit here and say that maybe we don't need someone who can play mostly down the left in an attacking sense. There are a number of players already at Spurs who can do that. But I just think that if you took it as a move on its own, then it's a decent one by the club. I mean, maybe he'll turn into the new Son and we'll be laughing, and he probably won't. But I just think that when we're looking for players to come in and maybe be a very good rotational person, then someone who's 23 and, as I said, international, has scored goals at every competition he's played in, we could have done a lot worse. I certainly didn't want to spend 15, 20 million on another person to maybe come and be that role. So I think it's a good signing by the club.
Yeah, I do agree with you, HG. David, how are you feeling on the topic?
Yeah, look, I think it's a clever signing by the club. You know, we needed a body up in one of them forward areas out wide, especially with Sonny going off to the Asian Games in January. And I think you've got AFCON as well going on. So, like, we needed someone in that area. But, you know, we didn't have the massive amounts of money to get a player of that quality in without sort of hampering what we're going to do in that defence and stuff like that. So I think it's a piece of smart business that you've sort of added strength and depth to one area, but also saving your money to be able to go and get that defence that we need. And look, I can get why there hasn't been a hysteria around it. Ben, we sort of had this conversation the other day, right? It's off the back of a massive signing like Maddison. Also, many Spurs fans preferred centre-backs coming in here. You know, and also the tickets were put up as well. So it was sort of announced during a time where maybe Spurs fans were a bit sort of annoyed with the club. So there hasn't been that hysteria around it. But at the end of the day, you know, he's very similar to Sonny in that he likes to get on the ball, cut inside, put one into the bottom corner, you know. And this is a guy that adds versatility right across the front line. He can play calm left and right. And he likes to beat his man as well, which is something that we've been missing at Tottenham. You know, over the last few years, too many players that want to just pass the ball on, shirk the responsibility. One thing that I think many fans would like about Manor Solomon is a lot of his good work actually comes from deeper, where he likes to drop deep, get on the ball, get turned, and see the game in front of him and play. So for me, I think it's a smart option all around by the club. However, I will say, I don't think they would have signed him if there was a fee involved.
Yeah, it's an intro. Would you still feel the same way about the transfer? About, you know, everyone. I think everyone can agree as a free transfer, it's a good transfer. But we're talking about the impact that he could potentially have in Tottenham. Would you still feel the same way about this transfer if we don't go and push the boat out on these centre backs and he does become one of our main transfers?
No, I wouldn't. Look, we all know, the whole world knows we need centre-backs. It's our biggest Achilles heel. It's our biggest problem. If we kept a few more clean sheets or conceded a few less goals last season, we wouldn't be sitting here enduring a campaign this season with no European football. We'd be back in European football. So if the club neglects centre-back again, expect the same shit that we've seen in the previous few seasons to prevail yet again. It does not matter what we do in forward areas. We have Kane, we have Son, some of the best players in the world in their positions that bag us goals. But the support cast behind them are just nowhere near good enough. And as much as we sit here and, as Spurs fans, we do sort of prefer our team to attack and outscore opponents and stuff like that. We want to see goals. But at some stage, we have to recognise the importance of keeping clean sheets. Especially if we want to go and win trophies, which is what most Spurs fans talk about, dream about, that they demand from this football club. You have to have that solid backline, and until we get that, things won't change. So, of course, it'll, dampen the signing completely or piss me off if it's one of our main signings, because it shouldn't be. That should be a signing that is there to add strength and depth in other areas.
Yeah, you're talking about the value of keeping clean sheets. I'm not sure our manager feels the same way about that, to be honest. But Sim, what are you feeling about Manuel?
Clean sheets, look, I am personally a bit conflicted about the signing, because he's not someone I would have wanted to bring in at the beginning of the window. I was really, when Tottenham was talking about signing a winger for next season, I was really looking for one who I really believed could potentially rival, or even Son could pass the baton on to if Son truly is on a decline. Someone who could really push Sonny for next season. Someone who actually we could believe could potentially rival Son for that left wing spot in the first team next season. And I do believe we've gone for the cheaper option in going for a Manuel Solomon who's on a free transfer. Yes, he's 23 years of age. He's a young winger. I actually do believe he has some of the qualities that Ange probably wants a winger to have in terms of his ability to take on a man. But I obviously saw a lot of his good qualities at Fulham with some of the goals he was scoring. But overall, when he was on the pitch, albeit we didn't get a massive sample size because he was injured for a lot of it, I wasn't too impressed. I thought a lot of the times he was anonymous within the game. And I thought even though he did score spectacular goals, he didn't seem to be a player who was always getting in very dangerous positions, looking to hurt the opposition. He seemed to be a player who always looked for the spectacular and kind of dribbles a lot with his head down, not someone who likes to bring other players into play. He's a player who would frustrate you, I feel. But don't get me wrong, he's still very young. He clearly has immense talent. We've seen that for Shakhtar in the Champions League. He scored against Man City. He scored against Real Madrid. We saw that at Spurs Fulham as well with some of the unbelievable goals he was scoring over a short spurt. So if he is brought in, obviously to sit on the bench and come on as a sub or fill in when Son's injured, then I think it is that, and that's probably what he is brought in for. Then I think it is probably smart as a free transfer, low risk. If it goes well, you've got all of a sudden a £20 million player there. If it goes badly, you can still probably make a profit of 5-10 million. So I think it makes sense, but I think if we really wanted to move the needle a bit more for next season, I would have wanted a winger, someone like a Nico Williams from Atletico Bilbao, someone who I really believed can push the needle a bit more. Because if Son, we don't know what's going to happen with Son next season. As much as we all hope he gets back to his best, and I believe that he can, there is a chance that his decline is real and that maybe he won't hit the heights that he did a couple of years ago, getting Golden Boot and stuff like that. And if that's the case, all of a sudden we are a bit hamstrung. And if we had someone who we really believed could rival him and actually potentially take his spot or have a chance to, then all of a sudden that I think pushes that each player can push each other and we have more of a squad. But I do, in terms of him playing the role that he's brought into, that we have brought him into, it's a fine signing. I just wouldn't have brought in a player for that role, if you understand what I'm saying. But I'm not mad at the signing. I think he could be a smart signing.
HG, do you get what Simeon's getting at a little bit with with Son being on the wrong side of 30? Should we not be bringing in someone that can take up that mantle, that when Son eventually does leave, can take that mantle up?
Yeah, obviously we need to be thinking long term. I mean, Kane and Son aren't going to be at Spurs forever, as much as I would love that to be the case. So, yeah, I understand. I think that because we don't have unlimited funds, and any money that we are going to spend is most likely going to go on a centre back. We spent 40 million on Maddison, which was a key signing. We spent money on the goalkeeper, which is another key signing. And as we've all said, Manuel Solomon probably wouldn't be a key signing at any point. So, and signing the next Son right now probably isn't a key signing for Spurs. So to do it to get someone in on a free transfer that has the potential to maybe be something along those lines. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Son. Like, he clearly doesn't have the record, even at 23, that Son did at the same age. And I think
Yeah.
Son was around the same age when we signed him. But it's just this idea of the club is being smart. We're not getting free transfers in like, someone who's in their 30s to be a backup and hope. We're looking to maybe build and get a new team. And if Solomon ends up being part of that, and I think it does help that he clearly has an affection for Spurs. Like, the club means something to him. He's not just a player looking for a decent ability. He's like, no, I'm going to go to Spurs. I want to play for Spurs, and maybe I won't be first choice in my first season, but that's okay. I back myself, and I think that's a good thing. So I understand the desire to want something different, and maybe something different would be better. But I do think that certainly this summer, the attacking midfielder, the centre backs are a much bigger need, and a free transfer punt, if you want to call it that, is not a bad thing for Spurs.
Does it not maybe follow the narrative of wingers that we have signed maybe in the past under Pochettino? Went for Ng and Nkudu, pretty much unknown names. I know Solomon did play in the Premier League and maybe he is a calibre above that. But I guess my question is that last week we spoke about our Spurs being smart or our Spurs being cheap. I saw a comment underneath saying we're being smarter about being cheap. What would you say to that?
Smart or cheap? I mean, clearly it's cheap. There's no doubt about that. Clearly it's cheap. Only time will tell if it's smart. But as Spurs have shown, sadly, spending money doesn't equal smart either. And I would rather go with that. So, like, as I said, because it's not a necessary thing, I'm okay with it. If we were going to do that for a centre-back, you'd start to wonder. You'd start to think, hey, this guy's only played 6 months in the Premier League and we're signing him on a free transfer to be our first choice left centre-back. I'd have many more reservations. But for Solomon, from what I've seen of him, I think that I do think it's a smart signing. And even if he never becomes the first choice left winger, the guy that will start every game, I'm happy that we're going to have someone who can do the things he can do.
Dave, any comments on that one?
Look, it's obviously cheap by the club, let's be realistic, but like HG has alluded to, there's other areas that's more important. I think we have to understand the stark reality of the problems we have at Tottenham Hotspur. You can't do absolutely everything in one window. The club just does not operate like that. As much as I would love to, as much as everyone on this panel, everyone watching would love the club to operate like that. They just don't. And whether we like it or not. And look, we also got to remember that we needed players up there. You also lost Danjuma, which we didn't want to bring back. Lucas Moura as well. And one other thing, I'll loop back to what Sim was talking about, having an option off the bench. I mean, how many times last season did we go into the bench and it was mainly filled with centre midfielders, wing-backs and defenders? We had no forward options whatsoever. And if there was, it was either one forward option and a youth kid, which Antonio Conte was never, ever going to bring off the bench anyway. So we do have to realise that we do need to bolster them options off the bench, especially under Ange Postecoglou. Anyone that knows this guy, he wants his system to be relentless for 90 minutes. And how he does that is he uses the bench. He utilises them 5 substitutions, freshens things up and keeps things relentless. And at the end of the day, we need players to come off the bench. And I get this guy is nowhere near the finished article. He needs to add more goals, more assists, a bit like what Sonny does to sort of really be that sort of finished article. But for me, we need these options. And you got to remember with this guy, his sort of career has been disrupted by what's gone on between Ukraine and Russia. That's not his fault. If you get the player that had the promise that he had at Shakhtar Donetsk, the player that had a say in helping Shakhtar do Madrid twice over in the group stage in the Champions League, you have a real player on your hands. And for all we know, with everything that's gone on with him having to sort of move on and everything else because of the war and everything else, it sort of put his life up in upheaval. And sometimes things like that can take a little time to sort of come back from, to sort of get yourself back to a normal sort of state and stuff like that. So for me, I think it's a signing based more on his potential than anything else. And let's see what happens. Look, we've been too quick at this football club over the last 3 to 4 years just to write off new players coming into this club. We've done it with Kulu famously. He doesn't have enough pace, this, that, and the other. And I get why. I get it, right? Because and the longer things go on the way they have done, the more signings that we make, every single one of them be criticised before they get in this door, because we're not seeing improvements. Once we do see the improvements on the football pitch, which will come when we sign centre backs, then I think we'll start sort of giving signings more of a chance. But for me, I think it's a shrewd acquisition, and we know where that money, the proportion of that money, needs to go this summer, and it has to be that backline.
All right, let's move on to our next topic, and it's revolving Harry Kane. And it's an interesting one, because if you're led to believe what Florian Plettenberg likes to be commenting in the press every day, I think Thomas Tuchel's pretty much camping out in Harry Kane's front room. Harry Kane's coming and delivering him tea every single day. They're best of buddies. Harry Kane's desperate to move to Bayern Munich. I mean, maybe we even saw a picture of Thomas Tuchel following Harry Kane into Hotspur Way yesterday on his first day back. But HG, do you really believe that Harry Kane wants this Bayern Munich move right now?
No, I don't. I don't think so. Like, I can see the logic behind it, because they need a centre forward, and obviously they have a chance of winning things very quickly, certainly in German football and maybe the Champions League if they have that striker. Tuchel's the Champions League winning manager. So I understand the logic behind it, but I guess if I'm Harry Kane, I'm thinking I want to be a free agent. So the idea of him throwing that money away, because that's what it would be, whatever money that Bayern are willing to pay for him now, he could ask for a fair chunk of that next summer. It seems a strange one to me. So as much as I see them as being the most obvious option outside of the UK for Harry, I don't think he really wants it right now, no.
And do you feel like when you hear all this news about Tuchel having tea and coffee at Harry's house and all this kind of stuff, firstly, do you buy into that? And second of all, like, you only hear this stuff coming out on the German side of the press. So should we really be led to believe that this is actual factual stuff going on?
I'm not one to believe the press in any country, to be fair. Like, clearly, Bayern are the big ticket in German football. They are what sells. They are the Manchester United. That's who these football journalists are going to report on. And Bayern need a striker. So it does make a whole lot of sense. And the idea that Tuchel's been to Kane's house, I mean, no one can really disprove it. It seems like a very easy thing to say. That doesn't mean I don't believe it, because I'm sure that if they wanted to try and convince him, they would send Tuchel to do that. And I think that Harry Kane would do his best to keep all his options open. So it may well be truth to it, but I don't think it adds any weight to the idea that Kane himself wants to go. Because I don't think it makes any sense for him to do so, from my personal perspective.
David, how are you feeling? Do you think Kane wants to move?
No, not at all, if you want me to be brutally honest. I think, personally, look, the meeting that was supposed to have took back in May, right? Now, the club was in absolute disarray in May. And in May, Harry Kane may well have sort of maybe had his head turned or his head elsewhere, because the reality is we're on a third manager. He didn't know what manager was coming in the door. Everyone else around him was quit. Things were going shit. We got knocked out of absolutely everything. So back then, if that was his thinking, I could understand. But also, I'd argue, what house? Maybe he brought him to the new house to help him, with plans for a certain room or something like that. That Tuchel has some expertise in. It's embarrassing. The German press and Bayern Munich are flirting with Harry Kane more than I do. Even I haven't brought the guy out for some after. It's an absolute joke. But look, I seriously think, and when you actually go on what Harry Kane has said, not what the German press is telling you, not what Florian Plettenberg is saying, none of that, right? Based on what actually has come out of Harry Kane's mouth back in January, he said he wants to win trophies at Tottenham. That's always been his aim. That's always been his goal. And he's in a position of power now at 29 to strong-arm the club into doing the business and putting the players in around him to put him back where he wants to be, which is, in a position to help try and win trophies at Tottenham Hotspur. It's all he's won. It's all he's ever asked for. Even at the end of the season, he alluded to getting back to values and stuff that were lost under Pochettino. Where were we under Pochettino? At least we were challenging. And that's all he wants. And for me, I think that's what's going on here. I think Bayern Munich, for all we know, it could be Harry Kane using Bayern Munich to get the club to do the business and put the players in around them. Plus, I'd also argue, when it comes to the Bundesliga, because there's no guarantees about them winning the Champions League, but there is the Bundesliga. Does that make him any more respected in any conversation, especially in and around the UK as one of the best strikers in world football? I don't think so. It doesn't put Owen Hargreaves in the conversation with Lampard, Scholes, and Gerrard and all that sort of stuff. So I'd argue not. And for me, I think that's what Harry Kane is doing. I think he's using the situation to get Spurs into a position where all of us want it to be.
Haven't you heard, David? Choupo-Moting's one of the best strikers in Europe now. Haven't you heard?
honestly, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I get that people might say, look, we want Harry Kane to go on and win trophies, this, that, and the other. I'll be honest. As much as I love the guy, and I do love him, sometimes more than my own missus at times, that can't be helped, right? But what I will say is that I've lost my point now. I've lost it. But what I will say is, when it comes to Harry Kane, is that it's if he leaves Tottenham, I don't want him to go on and win anything. I don't want him to go on and win trophies. I only care what these guys do at Tottenham Hotspur. I could not give a crap what they do outside of this football club once they leave it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's a difference between being open to a move and wanting the move. I think like 2 years ago, he wanted that City move. I think he was willing to, and he would try and do what was necessary anyway to try and get that move to Man City, miss a day of training, try and force it through, try and run the price down, whatever. Obviously, the move never happened. I think this time, it definitely seems as much. I reckon there's probably been conversations between the representatives of Kane and Bayern. Kane's probably said, look, if you can really agree a deal with Tottenham and they accept an offer, I'm open to moving to win some trophies. But I don't think it's in a position where he's desperate for a move to Bayern. He's going to start kicking up a fuss and start really trying to drive the price down. And I also don't think Bayern are going to get anywhere near the price Tottenham want for Harry Kane as well. So Bayern are reliant on Kane to do that if Kane wants this move to happen. I don't think Kane is that desperate for a move to Bayern to be doing that. So I don't think this deal's going to happen. But I do understand if Kane is open right now to a move to a team like Bayern, just so he can get that trophy monkey off his back and compete in the best competition in Europe, in the Champions League, knowing that Bayern have obviously no guarantees, but they still have a fairly realistic chance of competing for that trophy at this time, given their squad. So I can understand when there's talks between Tuchel and all the Bayern representatives, Kane's probably thinking, I would be open to that kind of opportunity if it happens. But he knows in a year's time he's going to be a free transfer. He's going to have a pick of clubs, or whatever the situation is going to be in a year's time. He's going to be in control of it. So I don't see him being just hell bent on going to Bayern this summer, and all the talks as well about Bayern also interested in getting him on a free. I don't think there's any chance he goes on a free to Bayern Munich. If he goes to a free, he's going to choose someone else.
Do you think that if the clubs can agree a fee, he goes?
If Bayern can agree a fee with Levy, I think he goes. Yeah.
What do you guys think? Do you think he goes if the clubs agree a fee? HG?
I think if the clubs agree a fee, then clearly the club wants him to go. I mean, that's the crazy thing. And I'm just not sure the club will ever get there. But, I mean, Munich is a great place to live. And I think that when it comes to, if for someone like Kane, who people have wondered if he was ever going to leave England, if he ever had the I don't want to say the mentality, but if he just wanted to, Munich is a very English city. I think that the fact that Germans all speak English pretty well, it's probably the easiest place for him to go and settle quite quickly. But I know nothing about his family, but I suspect they're a very local, East London family. Everyone helps each other out. He's got 3 children with a 4th on the way, I think. Like that plays a part. I moved away from England, but I moved away in my mid-20s without a family. It was much easier than it would be to do it with a family. Even if he's got all the money he has, I just don't think it's a challenge that he needs to take on. So it would be interesting to see what would happen. But I think if the club said, "Hey, this is money that we're happy to move on," then Kane may well decide, you know what, I will never be the bad guy here. Maybe I do it, and we'll go from there. But it's a tough one. It's I don't think he wants to go. But if the club said, well, the money's going to help us out, we'd like to move you on, then I think he probably would go. Yeah.
I just kind of feel like he values that family. I mean, this is all speculation and just what's in my head, but I just feel like he just values the family life, living in London a lot. He wants to chase down Alan Shearer's record, and I think he wants to give maybe maybe just Spurs one last chance saloon to see if we can prove to him that we can change and we can get better. And I feel like he does want to stay in the Premier League. So I don't know. I just don't know if he does make the Bayern move, even if we do kind of agree a fee with them. And I feel like the only move abroad that is really appealing to him, that would really maybe make him kick up a fuss, is the Real Madrid move, because that's just the biggest club in world football. I just have my reservations or my doubts about if he would actually go over to Germany and uproot his family to Germany and go and play in the Bundesliga. I don't know how you're feeling on that, Dave.
No, I don't think he will end up at Bayern Munich, to be honest with you. Look, I agree with you. I think if Real Madrid come calling, it's a different story altogether. David Beckham left United with an all around him and still went to Real Madrid. It's a complete different lore. Look, Harry Kane, like I keep saying, if you go off what he said before, he wants to win stuff at Tottenham. It's what he's always stated he wants to do. Now, I get, people say, oh, but he wanted that City move. Different time. You had Nuno Espirito Santo. From what I was told by somebody, that when Nuno Espirito Santo came in, he only spoke to Harry Kane once and ignored him for the rest of the time. That's why Harry Kane didn't want to be here. He didn't want to play under Nuno. But when it comes to Postecoglou, I think it's a different story. I think Harry Kane will be G'd up by Postecoglou words, where it's like, if Harry Kane wants to be successful, I want to be successful. Let's get on the training pitch and make it work. And for me, I think will Tottenham pay him more than what Bayern Munich will offer him? I think so. And I also think Harry Kane will be given the keys to Tottenham, Mr. Captain, Mr. Tottenham. He'd be the face of Tottenham Hotspur, which he deserves to be, which I'd argue he should have been maybe a few years ago. But look, again, I keep telling people this. Everything has been driven by the buying club side. Even Man United done the same thing. Everything has been driven by the buying club side. At the end of the day, until a substantial offer comes in, forget about it. And I'd argue how seriously Bayern Munich want him as well, because if you're going after one of the best players in the world, one thing you don't do is piss off the selling club. And they've already pissed off Daniel Levy. They've already dripped and fed around with fees. In fact, it's a bit Spursy what they're doing in their pursuit of Harry Kane, if you want me to be brutally honest. They're lowballing us. They're trying to strong-arm us because they know he's got 1 year left on his contract. And look, I just have a feeling, no matter what Bayern offer, I don't think Daniel Levy will sell. I really don't.
They're trying to out Levy, Dave. What's going on here? Levy will never be out Levied, let's be honest.
No, look, Levy's doubled down on it. He's come out and he said he's going to make them bleed. So,
Dave, what's a substantial offer in your eyes? What offer brings Tottenham to the table?
I think around 130, 140 million sort of gives Daniel Levy maybe something to think about. Do I see clubs paying it? No, not with 1 year left on his contract either. And look, Daniel Levy, he priced Man City out of a move for Harry Kane. So if Man City ain't going to offer for him, I question where these other clubs are going to get that sort of money. And it doesn't matter who comes in. Daniel Levy's just going to keep opening it anyway. He will keep Kane here. By hook or crook, he will. He's done it so far.
HG, what do you think the breaking point is for Levy? At what price point does that bring him to the table, or he accepts a deal for Harry Kane?
I think for an English club, the fee that David suggested probably works. But for a European club, I would think the £100 million, €100 million. I mean, I know there's a big difference, but I think £100 million would be something that would be acceptable for Levy if it was going to Bayern. I'm surprised that Bayern have offered what they have done, if they have offered 80 million plus add-ons for him. Because from Bayern's perspective, it's weird. Like, Bayern assume they're going to win the league every season, right? And signing Kane doesn't guarantee them that, because they think they're going to do it anyway. They did it last year without a striker. But signing Kane gives them the chance of winning the Champions League. They can go and sign the best striker in German football and pay the same money and dominate German football and continue to do so. But they clearly think that Kane is the best option to dominate European football, which is what they want to do. So it's a tough one. I think that with only one club showing any real interest, Levy, what do you do? Do you keep your best player, or do you take £100 million? Like that I think that's probably going to be the fee. If it's 9 figures, then it'd be something that Levy might say, okay, maybe we should consider it. Although maybe Levy's already decided that we're not going to consider anything. It's a strange one, but I think. For Spurs, 9 figures, as much as Kane is the best goal scorer in British football and one of the best in the world, with a year left, there's no guarantee that he's going to sign a new deal, even if we won the league this year. He may not, he may think, you know what, this is the best time to go out. I've done everything I can for Spurs. So I just think it's, 100 million might push Levy's buttons enough.
Well, forget the way Levy's thinking. If you were in Levy's shoes, HG, and the 100 million bid comes in, are you accepting it?
I made this deal with myself 2 years ago that if we kept Kane, if we kept Kane when he had 3 years left on his deal, I was like, look, if we get Kane from the age of 21 to 31, and he's our main striker, and he leaves on a free, I'm okay with that. We've got 10 years of the best striker that most of us will probably ever see. I can't imagine a better striker at Spurs. I hope there will be one, but he's clearly the best striker in my lifetime. So I just think that I would keep him. If you want to improve as a club, you keep your best players. You don't sell them on. We tried that and we progressed slowly but surely. But I think that right now, Spurs, considering revenue is less of an issue, it should be, you keep your best players for as long as you can. And unless someone offers something really, really stupid, then no. You keep him. And if he chooses to leave on a free, then he would have my support. I don't mind him doing that. If he went to Arsenal or Chelsea, I'd like it less, obviously. But I just think that 10 years at Spurs, when, I don't want to say he's been better than the club, but clearly we have struggled in the last few seasons, despite him being there. I think that he's done his time and he could go anywhere else. But so I probably would keep him regardless of what was offered.
Can I also come in and say, and I had this conversation with you the other day, Ben, but we need to change the narrative around some of our top players. Look, I get it, right? The media for years have been trying to engineer a move for Harry Kane out of Tottenham to one of the bigger clubs in England so that they can fawn all over him. It's absolutely embarrassing. And, I get it. We're influenced, and a lot of people are influenced by what the pundits say and everything else. But what we don't remember is Spurs are the most underrepresented in that area. So you never, ever, very rarely have a Tottenham point of view to counter some of the stuff that some of them other pundits say. And as fans, I think we need to stop buying into that. When we moved into this new stadium, we were told that it would help us even more to be able to hang on to our best players, that we won't ever have to sort of sell them and stuff like that. And we need to change the conversation around and stop throwing in the towel so easily and giving in so easy. I get why we do it, because we're so resigned to all of our good things just being taken away from us, right? I absolutely get it. But we need to start changing the conversation and stop buying into the media narrative about, we need to sell him, or how much would you take from him? Let's change the conversation to what the Tottenham need to do to convince this guy that his future lies here and that it's heading in the right direction to win trophies. Because at the end of the day, when this guy talks about winning trophies at Tottenham, it's what the fans want. So if that's what we want, the conversation should be around how do we keep him and elevate him and this club into a position to be able to compete.
What do you think the season looks like next season? If, let's say, Kane was to somehow sign a contract, what would next season have to look like for him to do that, do you think, Dave?
Look, I think, this summer the club need to show real ambition in the transfer market. We need to strengthen our weaknesses and also add a bit of strength in depth. We need to clear out players that Harry Kane has been at this club with for 9-10 years, that every time he puts the ball in the back of net, he looks round and some of them guys are picking it out twice as fast. And he knows they're not good enough. He knows that. And it needs to be freshened up. It needs to be, and also bringing in Ange Postecoglou with his mentality, the way he talks, will also help Harry Kane playing in an attacking side, which means it'll also elevate Kane's game because you're constantly getting the best out of him rather than using him as a battering ram and then a guy that finishes the ball. So for me, I think, you bring in the right players, you get off to a good start, and I think Harry Kane signs a new contract.
HG, you think Harry Kane's going to sign that contract?
No, I don't. I don't think it. I understand the reasons why we all want it to happen, and I think there are good reasons why to think it could. But I suspect the only way Harry Kane signs a new contract is if we are the best available option, and I don't think that's ever really going to be the case. Sadly, I'd love to think we could be, but he's just so good. He's going to have every single club. If he's available on a free transfer, any of the bigger teams, any of the richer teams, not bigger, but richer teams, will look at that and say, I'll give him $500,000 a week. No problem. Sometimes more. I mean, that's the money it's going to cost Spurs to keep him. And I would love to think that we're going to have this massive turnaround under Ange, and we're a stable club and we can somehow convince it. But I think we'd have to finish top 2 in the league and win something this season for Kane to even consider Spurs. And I mean, I'm an optimistic guy, but I don't know if I see that happening. Like again, please play this in a year and prove that I'm wrong. I would love that to happen. But I like if I'm Harry Kane and I love the club, I'd still think, Glenn Hoddle gave us 10, 14 years at Spurs and then left on a free, and is still considered and he went abroad, which is great, and then he went and played for Chelsea, which we don't talk about. But the thing with Kane could easily do something similar, and I just think that when you've given Spurs that kind of service, maybe you've done enough. Sadly,
I agree with that, Sim.
Yeah, I do think it's very unlikely that he signs a contract. I do think there's a small chance that if, like, let's say we get into the Champions League and we're playing really well, and it looks like actually we're a serious. If he believes we're a serious team, and like we can
What does serious team mean though?
Challenging for the title.
Yeah.
Like not next season, but let's say we have like a season like Liverpool did under Klopp, where they finished top 4, but they look like they're clearly going in the right direction, and then the next season they were challenging for the title. Like if we have a season like that next season, maybe, and he's not too convinced about the other options like Man United or whatever, then maybe there's a small chance. But unfortunately, it's going to have to take something miraculous this season for Ange to pull something off in keeping Harry Kane. And I just think that if he does end up staying this summer, which I do think is highly likely, like all the options are open to him. There's no reason for him to rush into signing any contract. If he does sign, I reckon he'll do probably what Mbappe did, which will literally run it down all the way until like the day before it's up, before signing. And he's not going to rush at all. He's going to keep us sweating. So I think in terms of like percentages, it's probably like, I would say at this point, like 95% sure he ain't going to sign a contract.
95% sure. Dave, you're the last one hanging on to Harry Kane going to be signing that contract.
Look, the reality is I've been told year after year for the last, 7-8 years that this guy's leaving Tottenham. I'm still sitting here looking at him, supporting him season in, season out. Many told me when City came in, that City's gone. I was sitting there doing 5-hour fan shows at a time, and everyone telling me, Dave, Kane's going, this, that, and the other. You're wrong on Harry Kane. Well, I'm still the one sitting here watching him in a Tottenham Hotspur jersey here today. So what I would say is I don't write off hope. When I look at things, he's building his retirement home sort of beside a golf course. His wife is expecting another child. I don't think he's uprooting his family, that easy just to go to Bayern Munich, this, that, and the other. And for me, I still hold on to hope that we can sign this guy to a new contract. And look, I think we all should, because Harry Kane staying at Tottenham makes Tottenham a better team. It's that simple. And it also gives Ange a better chance of doing something with Tottenham this season than without Harry Kane. So for me, I don't give up hope yet. People keep telling me every year, Dave, he's going. Guess what? He's still a Tottenham player.
He's never had this short on his contract, though. Go on, HG.
Sorry, I mean, the contract is a big thing, but I think the wage is a massive part of it. Like, if he's available on a free transfer, there are clubs around Europe that will break their bank to sign him. And Spurs would have to match it. Almost certainly they'd have to match it to have a chance. I just don't see it. Like, I understand that we all want it, and we all do want it, but that wage thing is like we got him to sign a deal that was, I mean, even at 200 grand 6 years ago, it felt like we'd done okay. The idea of somehow getting a good deal next time around, I want to believe it can happen again. But yeah, I can't see it.
HG, in terms of the money situation, what you're talking about, there are rumours that we've offered him 4 to 420 grand a week. Is that enough, or you're talking about even more than that? Because that is the highest paid player in the Premier League.
I think he would be worth more. I think there would be a club around. I mean, like Barcelona, Real Madrid would pay him $500,000 a week easily. I believe that, because again, on a free transfer, you're looking at. I mean, Real Madrid were paying. How much did they pay Hazard? £100 million to sign Hazard with a year left, and gave him silly money. Bale was on 600 grand a week, I think, when his final deal at Real Madrid. That's the kind of money that clubs will offer. I think Man City would happily pay it. I think there are a number of teams that would happily pay that because there's no transfer fee. So if you're paying I mean, my math isn't good, but 500 grand a week for 4 or 5 seasons, that's less than a transfer fee. That's less than the fee that Bayern are supposedly offering now. It's a great deal for any club. But I just, yeah, yeah. Look, no, Spurs are going to finish top 2, and then Kane's going to sign a new deal, and that's that, right? We'll
That's
just
obviously
be
gonna happen.
yeah, optimistic from now on.
Come on. Kane till 2028, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic of the panel. And Spurs fly out to Australia tomorrow for the pre-season tour. There's been some murmurings of who's going to be left behind on that tour, prospective players that are going outside the door. Dave, who are you thinking? Who's going to be left at home?
Well, look, obviously you have some of the injured players there that will be left at home. Outside of that, I think you're probably looking at someone like Lo Celso, Perisic, maybe Sanchez, people with moves sort of rumoured to sort of be underway and stuff like that. So that's who I think will be left at home.
Do you think potentially, I think we know, don't we, that Forster's going to be left at home, and there was another, was it Jed Spence? Sessegnon as well, but there was one more as well. Bentancur, that was it. Yeah, you're right. So, I mean, we know probably Lo Celso. You think Perisic as well, left at home?
Well, if the rumours about Hajduk split are sort of that, maybe there's a deal there to be had, maybe I think so. Look, we've got a squad of 35, 36 players now, if I'm correct. Last year, we brought 28 to Korea. So if you're going on the numbers that we bought last year, there are going to have to be, a few players sort of left behind. Because also with that squad in Korea, that was very, very bloated and included some youngsters as well. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of the outgoings. And to be honest with you, I think we're at a point where regardless whether other players have a move lined up or not, make your intentions clear as a club. You're being left behind and you're not a part of this going forward. And for me, as a club, I think it's easy for them to do. You just look at, the majority of the players who have turned in crap performance after crap performance after crap performance, happily sit down, watch a manager be sacked for it. You just leave them at home. It's that simple.
HG, do you feel there'll be a high number of players left behind, or do you think it will just be like any normal tour and the majority of the squad will go?
No, I think the club know. I mean, there are certain players that are still at Spurs that Postecoglou has already decided is not part of his long-term plans, and there'll be the ones who are old, like Perisic or Lloris, and it'll be ones that are towards the end of the contract and have been at Spurs a long time. That means Sanchez and possibly Dyer. I mean, I think Dyer would go, but that kind of idea where they are not a long-term solution. And I think really the only people above 30 who I expect to go would be Kane and Son. I can't think of anyone else who would count as being a long-term solution. So, I think Ndombele will go. I suspect Lo Celso might not, because again, what's the point if you don't think you're going to see a future of him? And I think Ange is willing to see Ndombele maybe as a solution for one of those positions. But I mean, if you're looking at 5 or 6 players that aren't going to go, then yeah, the older ones who have got a short time left on the deal are the obvious cases. And as David said, the ones that maybe have a deal lined up already. Like we saw Lo Celso's been linked with Betis, where he played before. Those seems obvious ones. It's not as if Lo Celso has come back and made it clear that he wants to hang around. I think he's just happy to see what's going to happen. So but I don't think we're going to see too many surprises. I'll put it like that. I think there will be logical decisions based on age and contract length.
There's been a lot of rumours regarding Pierre this summer about him going to Atletico or potentially maybe another club. Sim, do you think he's one that could be potentially left at home?
He looked in good spirits when he came back into training the other day.
You told us not to read into the Ndombele one, so don't be reading into the Højbjerg one either.
I'm a body language expert. I'm reading into all of it. Do I think he goes? I suspect he probably would, just because he's a more senior member of the squad. He's one of the leaders. So as long as anything's not really advanced with Atletico, I do think he travels with the squad. If he doesn't, that must be a big sign that something's really close with him. So I would be a bit surprised if he didn't travel. I suspect we'll learn a lot about Reguilon's future as well, if he travels or not. I think if he travels, maybe he does have a future here next season. If he doesn't, we know he's probably out the door. I think Sanchez won't go. I think Rodon, I've got a feeling he won't go. I've got a feeling he'll that they won't take him along, and they'll probably look to sell him. And I think I think all eyes for me anyway is going to be on Ndombele, because I think if he does travel, which it looks likely, because he does seem to be playing quite well in training right now, and there's some good noises coming out about him. I'm really excited to see what happens if he travels and maybe gets a second. This could be a final chance for him, and I'm really excited to see what he shows out there on the tour.
Dave, you want to see Ndombele on that plane?
I mean, look, Sim loves doing this. He done it with Winks as well. He can be an air
between Winks and Ndombele.
Sim was short of saying Winks could be an air pilot, for God's sake. When it comes to Ndombele, the conversation is never around the talent. It's about his willingness to allow his talent to shine, the work rate behind it. Look, I can see why someone like Postecoglou would want to give him a chance, being an attacking manager and stuff like that, and maybe looking at some of the good stuff he did do in the Spurs jersey. I can understand it. However, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. And if Ndombele doesn't want to move about, well, then that's on him at the end of the day. I only want this guy kept around if he is serious and it's in a starting role. For me, otherwise than that, I think, he's got to go. I'd also argue...
Do you really think Ange would let him on the plane if he's just not caring at all?
See, what we've got to understand is, right, what's happened at Hotspur Way over the last couple of days, it's like work. Coming back, few bleed tests, see where people are at fitness-wise, a bit of ball work. Now that all the internationals are back, you're going to see the real work happen over in sort of Australia on the pre-season tour, a bit like what we saw with Antonio Conte when they headed out to Korea last season. So it's really hard on what we've seen so far to make a determination on whether the guy is committed or not. You'll only really know when you send him through the real tough running for pre-season, how much grit, how much desire he has to see that out, to finish it out. So for me, I think he will go, because I don't think you can make a call on it just now. I think you have to wait until you put him through the paces to really determine whether this guy has had a change in mentality and attitude or whether he hasn't.
HG, what's your feeling?
Interesting. Sorry, would it be interesting if you took Ndombele, right, and then didn't play him? You just wanted to see how well he was at supporting everyone else. That would be an awful thing to do, because I don't think it would help at all. But you could imagine someone, that would be a Mourinho thing, right? I'm going to take you just to see how you react to this nonsense situation I've put you in. Because Ndombele, we all know, if he's got the ball, he's a great player. That's it. And you want to see him play. You want to see him on the ball. You don't want to see him outside his 18-yard box trying to shuffle from side to side as the other team have the ball. So Ndombele will go. I mean, David's right. Ndombele will go. We don't know what Ange's going to think, and he can't have decided in 10 days. I'd be surprised. Those players the bigger players that won't go will be the ones that have a team maybe looking at them already. And in the same way that Bale didn't play a single pre-season game after the first one the summer he left because we were protecting him, it will be something along those lines. It's the club making a decision based on, look, Lo Celso is 27, we'll get decent money. Højbjerg is 28 in a few weeks, we'll get decent money. We'll protect them so we can then use that money to get the centre-backs we need.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to the final topic of the panel today.
Go on, Dave.
Go on.
Just before you do, what about Hugo Lloris, lads? Because he's still club captain as we speak. Do you bring that guy on tour until he finds a move, or do you leave him at home so you can really get your changing club captain and really implement going in a new way? What do you do at Hugo?
I think Lloris stays at home, to be honest. I think there are a couple of teams interested in him. We've led to believe that by the press. And I think this week, while Spurs are on tour, these next 2 weeks, is probably a good opportunity for him to go and speak to those clubs and, really start to make the move for himself. And I think that's probably the similar situation like HG was saying for all the players that are maybe going to be out the door or looking or got clubs interested in right now. So I think Hugo Lloris stays at home, in my opinion.
I agree.
I just hope the club are ruthless enough to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he is club captain, and if nothing's really advanced, then it is a bit of an awkward thing. You're not taking your club captain, even though there's still, guess, technically a chance he stays. But I think surely something. So it seems like things are happening with him.
Yeah, like a few of the players, and I think all those players kind of will be left at home. But anyway, let's move on to the last topic of the panel. And it's regarding us Spurs fans. And I'm looking at you here, Dave. No, I'm joking. It's like, do Spurs criticise too much? And, this is off the back of the Big Delhi interview this morning. I don't know if you all saw it, but, really, really brave of Delhi to come out and to say what he actually did, as well as Tanguy and Ndombele, who Spurs fans love to pile on, Eric Dyer as well, David, and also Kieran Trippier as well, who was chased out the door back when Spurs did sell him, and he's come back and made himself one of the best, if not the best, right back in the Premier League. So we'll start off with you on this one, HG. Do you feel like Spurs fans love a scapegoat and love to pile on and criticise a bit too much?
As long as I can remember, Spurs fans have always had a scapegoat. I mean, even the only thing I knew about Mitchell Thomas was that he was rubbish, and this is the late '80s. Do you know what I mean? I'd never seen Mitchell Thomas play, but for some reason it had filtered down that Mitchell Thomas was the reason we lost games. It was unfair then. I'm sure it's unfair now. I've always thought there's a difference between a fan and a supporter, right? And a supporter understands that you go to the game to watch Spurs. You want to see them win. You hope they win. You cheer them on so they can win. But there's no expectation that you're going to do it, whether you're playing Luton Town or Manchester United. You understand there is more chance you're going to beat Luton Town, but you still have to do something. You have to make it happen. They won't just roll over for you. And I think that the criticising now that we see from fans rather than supporters is more, every little thing gets overanalyzed, and obviously we're doing it right now. So I'm just as to blame as anyone else out there. But I do wish personally that football fans in general, not just Spurs fans, but football fans in general, understood that even though you're paying a lot of money to watch these people play and they're earning a lot of money to do so, your job is not to criticize in those 90 minutes. And even outside of that, it doesn't hurt you to be a bit optimistic that, maybe the player didn't play well because of X, Y, Z. That's not necessarily finding an excuse. It's just understanding that there are 11 players on the other side who are going to stop your players from playing their best football. It's not something you can do by yourself. There are very few footballers in world football who have the ability to play well regardless of the opposition. They don't exist. Højbjerg is another one of those. We've seen him play really, really well for Spurs. We've seen him play really, really well for Denmark. But if it doesn't happen every week, suddenly he's not very good. I don't understand that logic. So I think fans in general, not just Spurs fans, but I do think fans in general are a bit too quick to criticise.
Well said, HG. And Dave, what's your say on the topic? I mean, you look at the interview that Dele Alli did, and you just don't know what goes on behind closed doors sometimes. And fans just look at what's going on the pitch and heavily criticise or heavily comment on what's going on the pitch. But do you think maybe fans should just take a pause on that a little bit, because we don't know what goes on behind closed doors?
Look, first of all, really emotional interview by Dele Alli, and all my compassion and sympathy towards the guy and any sort of professional footballer that goes through that, because it's not like me, right? We all go through stuff, and if I went through something, I can just close my door, close my curtains, and I can just sit behind closed doors. Where these guys still have to turn up to training. If they're picked for match day on the bench, they still have to sit there in front of the whole world, right? So I do have a bit of compassion and empathy in that regard. But how are fans supposed to know what's going on when everyone in football close ranks? There's no transparency in football anymore. Everyone's hiding behind an NDA. Everyone's hiding behind an agent. Everyone's hiding behind something, And what we're seeing is back when my lads started supporting football, this, that, and the other, players were more personable. You knew exactly sort of what was going on, and you could maybe understand why some performances were happening. But in this day and age, when everyone's closing ranks, what do you expect fans to do if they don't know what's going on? At the end of the day, you can't blame fans. And look, for me as well, I think you can even throw Sanchez into this conversation, right? But the players that you've listed there, Dyer, Dele Alli, Ndombele, Sanchez, It's not like we get on their back after one performance. It's after string of a few years of bad performances, and that's the difference. And as a fan of the club, I don't see why we can't criticize performances. We should be able to criticize performances. You know, we work hard during the week and everything else to be able to go to games, be able to buy the games on TV, which also cost a lot of money, which go towards their wages. And at the end of the day, they're representing every fan's dream. And I don't see why you can't criticize them on their performances. Everything else outside of that, it's not right. But on their performances on the football pitch, they should. It's the nature of the beast. It's always been the nature of the game. That you play well, you get adored. You play bad over a period of time, the criticism comes out. And also, we got to remember on the flip side, when we're doing well, like we were under Pochettino, this Spurs fan base makes up more songs about their players to adore them than any other club across world football. So for me, it's you play well, the good comes, you play bad, the criticism comes. And at the end of the day, we're talking about elite level sport here. Elite level sport is performance based. If they're not performing, criticism naturally comes. And they're highly compensated for it as well. I know it doesn't make everything all okay. But as fans, if a player isn't putting it in on the football pitch, I think we have a right to criticize, because you've got to remember, not all the time is it because of other things that's happened in their life or mental health issues. Sometimes it is because the way they live their life. Sometimes it is because they just have a shit attitude towards it. Sometimes it is because they're just not as committed to football as you may want them to be, like Asto Akoto's case at Tottenham Hotspur. It's not always down to problems off the field. There are other times where players just don't give a bollocks. And the thing is, at Tottenham, we've seen it too much over the last 4 years. Players not performing too long. And as a fan, when it's my release, it's what I love, and it's the only thing I really adore in life. I get let down. I get frustrated. It's just natural that, you know, you end up criticizing performances. And I don't think that should be lost, because being brutally honest, you know, if I wasn't criticized sometimes growing up, how do I expect to be better? How do I expect to want to be better? Sometimes criticism you can use as a motivation rather than looking at it and bringing you down all the time. Like I said, I have full sympathy towards players that are going through stuff, because they have to deal with it in a more public manner than anyone else across the world. However, let's not get this mistaken that they haven't been criticized for anything else rather than the longevity of them not performing in the Tottenham jersey. And that's it.
But you know, I think there's a line between criticism and maybe a pylon, and when it becomes too much and it becomes abuse. And I think a lot of our players have suffered that. You know, players being booed on the football pitch. Davinson Sanchez at the back end of last season was on the back of those. So, I mean, there is a fine line, and I think that criticism on the whole, like you're talking about, I think is okay. But I think when it gets more than that, and when it becomes a pylon, when players start becoming scapegoated week in, week out, and it becomes abuse, that's where the problem really starts, right?
But the thing is, who's scapegoating who? Ndombele has turned up here not fit and hasn't performed. Dyer is out there making mistakes week in, week out. Dele Alli didn't perform at this football club for 2 years. Sanchez, I'd argue, has barely ever performed at this football club. So who's scapegoating who? No one's scapegoating anybody. The reality is their performance just have not been there.
But Dave, don't you think that by pointing it out, you're not helping the situation? Like, I'm pretty certain that when Dyer makes a mistake in front of 60,000 people in the stadium, he knows he's made a mistake. He doesn't need to be reminded of it. I mean, this is it. Like, I don't think anything is really different between how we react as fans now and how we did 30 years ago. Because as much as the money is different, like we're now paying much more than we did, and they're now paying much more than they did, that we would still, at the end of a game, you would say this person didn't play well, that person didn't play well, and it's how the fact that I can get that in any arena now. It's not just me and my mates in the pub. It's not just me and my group that go to the games. I can then do this here. We're all sitting in 3 different countries right now, and we can have these discussions. And so it's everywhere. And so for younger players that have grown up with it, then maybe they understand that pressure is there. But I just think that as fans, as annoyed as we might be, we still have a choice. The choice is, do we really want to criticize, or do we want to say, you know what, the other team did something, or maybe there was a reason why they. I don't consider that making excuses for them. It's just understanding that they are more than just robots that can go out there and do what we want them to do. It's a tough line because no one wants to criticise too much, and we all feel upset when Spurs didn't win. Me, because maybe I'm more upset that Spurs haven't played to their potential more than the fact we didn't win. Right, that's just who I am. But there are people out there who we could win the game 3-1 and would still be saying, "Ah, but we could have had 5." It's a lot to do with personal character, but it's like criticizing too much. Yes, I do think we criticize too much, but I don't feel as if like people themselves are any different than they were. It's just that we've now got more opportunity to criticize.
But also,
Yeah.
it's heightened by social media. Everyone wants more and more of an insight, so that demand is more and more and more, right? So it heightens everything. But
There's more
look, we
of
are
an insight, and there's more of a disconnect as well between the players and the fans. What there was maybe 30 years ago. So in one thing we want more, yet we're getting less.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. But also, I feel like we're entering a bit of a dangerous sort of territory here because criticism has always been the nature of being in the public eye. It's always been that way. You accept that when you sign them big contracts that you're going to be out there in the public eye, and you've also got to understand it's not going to be easy. You know, you are going to go through some trials and tribulations, and there are going to be criticism. But the conversation should not be on the fans because fans will always let you know if they don't enjoy your performances, but equally they'll also show you the love and the adulation when they do appreciate your performances. Just the conversation should be around. Have the governing bodies, have the clubs moved on to the modern day era where they understand that social media and everything else, it drives that criticism more at the player's door, and stuff like that, and it heightens it. Why can't the conversation be on the governing bodies? Are they doing more for players? How many ex-players have I heard come out with and say there hasn't been enough opportunities once they've finished playing football? There hasn't been this support network, this, that, and the other. And there's been so many players over the last 4 to 5 years that have all come out and sort of said the same thing. After the lights turn off, after you're finished playing football, there's no governing body. There's no one there to help you with the next step. There's no one help you to deal with the depression of not walking out there in front of 60,000 people every single weekend anymore. So the conversation should be more on the governing bodies and the clubs. Are they providing enough to these guys to be able to deal with it rather than constantly blaming the fans?
But I do think the fans have to take some, not specifically our fans, but I would say more modern day fans who are used to like social media have to take not responsibility, but have to maybe be more self-aware on how the way we criticize players now affects these players' mental health. Whereas, back in the day, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when a player had a bad game, there would be a call-in show on the radio, and there may be a column in the newspapers with play ratings, and that would be that. Now you have players making fail compilations. You've got players tweeting, "I never want to see this guy put on a shirt ever again. He's a disgrace."
Death threats.
All of these things. You've got death threats. You've got all these different things. And Dyer put out a documentary. Spurs put out a documentary on Eric Dyer the other day, a player who served us for 9 years and has been, yes, he's maybe not been the best player over all that whole time, but a lot of the reaction to that documentary was a lot of fans, putting very negative messages about it, and saying how Tottenham shouldn't be putting out documentaries about rubbish players like this. And when it gets to booing in the stadium for a player who hasn't played well, I completely draw the line at that kind of thing. I think it's unacceptable when Ndombele comes back from training and he's does a little stroll to the front door, and everyone are you getting tweets saying he's a disgrace? Look at his body language. I never want to see him put on a Spurs shirt. Look at him. It's like what are we doing here? Players see that. That's not criticism performance. That's just clearly personal things, and I think it can form narratives. This is what I'm trying to getting at. I think in this day and age, it's so easy for fans to form narratives on social media about players, and that's exactly part of what Dele was saying in his interview about how narratives would form from the press and social media about him, which were completely not true. And I think it's very dangerous when fans start to do that kind of thing. And for example, like failed compilations, it's so easy to form a narrative about a player by creating all their worst bits of any given game or any part of any season, and start to create a narrative about how bad this player is when you're very selective editing, and it's all to serve your own narrative that you're trying to create because you have a personal dislike for that player.
But Sim, if a player doesn't come out and shut things down, that allows the narrative to be formed. That now allows the narrative to build. And this is what I'm talking about transparency in football. You know, if a player's going through things, come out and say it. It's a different world now. The amount of support you'll get behind you, this, that, and the other, rather than maybe how it would have been sort of, received maybe, even 10 years ago, where it'd be like, look, mentally he's not up to it, get him out of the game. There's a lot more understanding around mental health in this world now. So for me, transparency. They can sit here and blame the fans, the press, and everything else. But they also hide behind closed doors. They hide behind people on their social media accounts. There's no transparency. If they would just come out and be honest, maybe the reaction would be slightly different towards them. There's no point in coming out crying about a narrative being formed when you've allowed it to be formed without coming out and speaking.
I mean, that's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Like, if you don't say anything, people will think what they want to think, and if you do say anything, some people will say, well, they're just lying anyway. Like,
well, at least you have it from the horse's mouth, though, right?
Well, it's true, but it's just that people react how they want to react to whatever happens in front of them. Like, I've been a big supporter of Danny Rose. I like Danny Rose. I think what he did and what he said, as much as I didn't like how he did it, I understood the logic behind it, and I quite enjoyed the fact that he was open and honest about how he felt at Spurs. But what happened to him? Right, he was very quickly shunned for doing so, and now he's considered a bit of a figure of fun, sadly. So you can see both sides of it. Like, no one is going to be the first one to voluntarily come out and say, "Hey, I'm struggling," because you know that there are hundreds, thousands of people who will say, "How can you be struggling? You're getting 50 grand a week," and the whole mental side will become irrelevant. Because lots of people will just, hey, if you're struggling, what do you think I'm doing? It becomes very personal very quickly. And I get that, right? I understand that that's kind of human nature. We do think about number one first, but you would hope. And I think that, what we've seen with Delhi today, people are realizing that, I mean, he says it himself in the interview, that together you can get through things quicker. So hopefully we'll have this moment today where everyone says, right, you know what? Maybe I'm not struggling right now, or I haven't told people about my struggles, but I'm willing to get out there and do it, just with my friends, with people around me. And then it will grow into being something that everyone is aware that everyone is going through something. And I think that when the world we live in right now, people just assume you can only have issues if you don't have the money to do what you need, regardless of anything else. And hopefully we can get away with this idea that money solves the problems. It can help, don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's not a bad thing to have, but it doesn't mean that you will be problem free and that the problems you have will be minimized. Money can't solve everything. It can help you, but it can't solve it. So it's crazy. Like, I don't know how long it will be until the next player comes out and says it. I suspect it will be longer than it needs to be. But I hope that the four of us together, we're all similar ages, if I can be so bold and say that about myself at least. But you three are similar ages, and I want to think I am. But we are going through similar phases in life, whether it's having kids or dealing with pressures of work and the politics involved. Just because Dele Alli has earned much more in his life than I ever will, doesn't mean he's immune to that. And so I hope that Spurs fans will support their own players better. I hope that whatever nationality we are, we support our international players better. And I can only think of one time. One time I was lucky enough to watch Austria play Ireland, oddly enough, in an international here in Vienna. It was a while ago, but I remember Austria won. I'll put that in there. But one of my mates worked for the Football Association, so he got me a VIP ticket. And I was actually sat with the players' families. And at that time, Austria's number 9 was Andy Weimann, who played at Villa and Bristol City for a while.
Yeah.
And the entire game, you had 50,000, 45,000 Austrians booing every touch. And you know what? Had I been sat somewhere else in the stadium, I may well have joined in, because he wasn't playing well and no one really wanted him to play. He was kind of the manager's favourite son who played, even though no one really thought he should. But where I was sat, just in front of me was Andy Weimann's mum and his little brother with an Aston Villa Weimann shirt on. And I saw it completely differently. That suddenly you saw them as humans. They weren't just these people that are out there playing. You realize that they had families and they had feelings, and that his little brother's going to go to school the next day and probably get teased for it. And that is not a normal thing to happen. I will not get teased for how my brother lives his life. And so I just... that changed the way I saw it, and I hope that because of it, I've become a bit better. Don't get me wrong; I have my scapegoats too. I have my players that I don't like, I don't think are particularly good, but I will never go past their football ability. To me, it's not what they've done on the pitch; it's their total ability, personal, that kind of gets to me. But who they are as people, I know nothing about them, so I will never go there.
Just off the back of this, where do we sort of draw the line? Because, do you stop talking about players' performances altogether? Ones that are just not good enough to be here. Do you not mention that? You know what I mean? Where do you sort of draw the line where you are allowed to sort of talk about their performances and stuff like that? Because it is relevant. You can't allow, players to stay here on exorbitant wages and not performing. You just can't. You just can't.
Dave, I don't think there's a problem with speaking about players' performances and criticising individual performances. I think, like I said before, where the problem lies is where, it gets way over the top. He's like, this guy's a shit guy, get him out of the club. Everyone's like, everyone's culpable of it. Everyone's done it before. I've done it before. And I'll probably do it again, to be honest. But that's where it shouldn't be done. And when it becomes a pile-on, and when it becomes abuse, when it becomes real abuse directed at one certain individual, I think that's when it gets way too much. And in terms of booing inside stadiums, I completely disagree with that. I've only ever booed two players, one player in a Spurs shirt before, and that was Hossam Ghali, because he threw the shirt down at Martin Yole. And I refuse to boo a player in a Spurs shirt. I think it's way over the top.
Look, as I said earlier on, I don't condone the abuse, but let's not fall into a narrative where you can't criticise a player's performance without it being taken that you're piling on a player, this, that, and the other, because it's not always necessarily the case. Sometimes, you're allowed to criticise a performance without it being a pile-on. That's all I'm trying to say. When it comes to abuse, it's too far. But the reality is, in life, you always have some mindless idiots that take it that far. And there's nothing that the rest of us shouldn't be chastised for it. Yes, you can bring awareness and stuff like that, but we're now talking about mindless idiots who take it too far. But we should still be sitting here allowed to criticise a player's performance if it's not good enough.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. I just think we have to keep in mind all the time, like when you speak about players, obviously I think when it comes to purely footballing performance and footballing level and all that kind of stuff, I think that is fair game. I don't think we should sit here and say this guy played well when you don't believe that. But I think when it gets to getting more personal and things like that, which I think a lot of fans cross that line, and when it gets to as well, like rubbing players' face in how bad they've done, and like really trying to let them know that they like for example, like making I remember when Lo Celso was going through a bad period of Tottenham, there was a Twitter account just making compilations just of every mistake he made, and he ended up blocking that account. But like clearly that stuff like gets seen by players, and there's really no need for that.
What about really, Emerson Royale? When Emerson first came to this club, he was getting booed at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for having poor performances. And yes, fine, he took a while to adjust, but since he's adjusted to the Premier League and adjusted in a Spurs shirt, people, I wouldn't say love him, but are liking him at the moment, and nobody really wants him sold at the moment. And that opening period of when he was adjusting to life at Tottenham was nowhere near good enough from this fan base. Nowhere near good enough, and it's happened many a time. So those are the moments that I'm talking about as well.
I'm not saying like if a guy loses his man and you think he's at fault for a goal, and you can say that, it's fine. You can call people out for mistakes or you not think they're good enough. But I think there is a line to be drawn, like personal attacks, like getting to their personality, talking about their attitude and things like that, unless it's really apparent, talking like things that people don't really know about. And as well, I just think like continuously, like there are accounts dedicated just continually attacking players, and that must really pull away on some of these players sometimes.
Yeah, no, 100%.
That's it.
All right, well, a great panel. I'd like to thank you both for coming on, but just before we end the show, do you want to go through the chats?
Yeah, let's go through some of the super chats. Moondog says Solomon is going to be a very, very great
Come
player.
on, Moondog.
Big up Moondog. Brandon Troller says, if it's an option, I'll take Delhi back on a free. Bring the man home. Help him recover on low wages as a player in there to be rediscovered down the line. What he did took guts, a turning point. I think he's absolutely right about Delhi's interview. 100% took guts. I don't know if it's right to be talking about a move back to Tottenham right now, but
If he has a good season this year, would you take him back on a free at the end of the year, guys?
I don't know.
HG?
Yeah, absolutely, I would. Because if he's played well, we know what he can do. We know what he can do in a system that's similar to the one that Postecoglou will play. So if one of your 8s ends up being a second 10 or a second striker, then we know how good Delhi can be. But I think I think we all know now that Delhi's success is most likely going to be based on the system. Despite what we've heard today, I think that we saw enough at Spurs to think that it was very much system based. But yeah, look, if he plays well for Everton, then why not? Although, Everton won't play that way either. So it's going to be a tough one for him. I wish him all the best. But I would like to think it's possible. But no, I don't think. I would, but no.
Okay, fair enough.
Michael Hellman says, I find the centre-back situation very concerning. We need to leg up and sign some folks. Well, yeah, look, we're sitting here a day before the tour. No centre-back's been signed. We heard one of them is going to be brought in before the tour. That hasn't happened. I don't know. We haven't heard anything over the past couple of days, really, about
No, it's all
centre-backs.
gone very quiet, hasn't it? Since Romano posted that it's very advanced with Tottenham and Wolfsburg, we've nearly had an agreement. It's just gone absolutely quiet. So maybe the silence
It's
means
always calm
something is
before the
happening.
storm, as they say.
Exactly.
But HG, is it a big deal for you if we don't get a centre-back in for the tour? As long as we get one in, that's the most important thing?
The way that Ange plays, I don't think centre-backs need that much adaptation to do what he asked them to do. So to me, it was almost 1st of August is like that moment of I'll panic if we don't have anyone by then. But to play against, a championship side in Leicester and Lion City Sailors, not so bothered. And so if it's just the West Ham game, no, we don't need it now. But when we come back for the Shakhtar and Barcelona games, yeah, I'd like to have at least one in by then, preferably 2.
Yeah, definitely. Garin Zerk says, if we have 8 FA Cups and many more trophies, why do we only display one and a ball at the stadium? It's just fueling the banter.
He must be talking about the trophy cabinet on the stadium tour or something. I don't know.
It only displays one trophy, does it?
I haven't been on it. I wouldn't know.
I'm not sure. No, I don't know what he's referring to. I don't know if any of you guys know. But that's it, really. Go on, Dave.
I think he's referring to, when you walk in one of the entrance off the high road there and you walk in, you've got a couple of trophies to your right-hand side. I think maybe he's referring to that. There's a couple of trophies in cases and stuff.
Show more trophies. I'm not against that. I think we can all get behind that. But yeah, that's it.
I would like to say thank you to David and HG very much for coming on the panel today. HG, everyone do go and subscribe to the Cheese Room podcast. But is there anything good coming up on the Cheese Room this week?
Yeah, so despite it being pre-season and summer, we're still going ahead with 3 shows a week. So on YouTube, Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 o'clock UK time is when we do things. I think the actual kind of audio podcasts aren't quite as common in the summer, but certainly we're trying to keep up the YouTube. So please come and join us and support us. And, we all love to talk Spurs. That's what we do too.
All right, so go over to the Cheese Room. The link is in the comment section right now. So go and hit that subscribe button. Dave, tell us about what's going up on the Irish Hotspur in the next week or so.
Well, obviously, the football's back, so that means the content will be ramping up because that's all I really care about is the actual football. So I cannot wait. Look, you can find me over the Irish Hotspur if you like what I have to say or add to these panel shows. And I'll see you all very soon for some build-ups to games this season.
Brilliant. Well, the link is also in the comment section. So go hit that link and press that subscribe button. And we're also going to do a bit of a shameless plug to our brand new channel as well called On The Ball. Content has started going up from yesterday. At the moment, we're doing transfer roundups from all around Europe. There's going to be more content coming your way on there as well with Bundesliga and Serie A focused content with real match footage in there as well. So please do hit that subscribe button on The Ball and And thank you very much. The support has been overwhelming so far, so I can't thank you enough. But that is it from the panel today. We'll see you all very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.